Hey guys, Michael here from Dapper Raptor, and today we're going to take a look at the difference between pure and impure functions. Now, pure and impure functions are a standard part of programming. They're available to in most programming languages, and that's true in blueprints as well. So we have a normal function when we create it will just look something like this. And when we drag it in as a node, we're just going to see it look like this. It's got an execution line. It might have inputs and outputs. It'll look like this and this. So this is what your standard function you see it looks like. Now, if you're not aware of pure functions, you might actually think that these style functions are parts of the engine. But in fact, we can turn this into a pure function by clicking on this button here, pure, by making sure new function is selected and turning it pure. This can be really useful in a lot of different ways, but it is very important to learn when you should be using pure functions and when you should be using impure. And that's sort of what this video is aimed at getting to. So let's delete this function, compile and save, and let's have a look at a little demo we've got here. So I'm just using the standard template. I've just cleared out the level a little bit, and we've just added a few little things here. So let's have a look at what we've got. We've got these two functions here, our get seconds impure and get seconds pure. If we open them up, we're going to see that they both actually look identical. All they do is take seconds and put it as an output. Seconds itself, we can take a look at on tick, is updated by taking delta seconds and adding it to seconds, which starts at 0. If we add a print string on here and hook up that there, compile and save, and then minimize, you can see all we're doing is counting the time that's passed since runtime started. That's all that function on tick is doing. Now, as always, you should not be using tick. If you can avoid it, this could very easily be done with a timer, but that's for another video. Just know that this is not the way you should do this. Now, you will have seen the widget on screen. All we're doing here is on begin play, we're creating the widget, saving a reference to and adding it to the viewport. And the widget itself is a very simple widget. It's just a border with a whole bunch of text boxes to show us seconds when we press a key. So let's get to that. We've got a key press event here. On F, we run update seconds pure and update seconds impure, which are these two events here, and all they do is go through and run the pure and impure version of the events and update the text boxes on the widget. So for pure, we run the pure event, update P1, wait 2 seconds, then update P2. For the impure one, we run the impure event, we update I1, we wait 2 seconds, and then we update 2. So let's see that in action, because that may present differently to how you expect. I'm going to press F now. And what you will notice is that the pure function gave us the correct value, whereas the impure function gave us the value at the time that we ran it. I can run that again just to demonstrate. So why is that? This may be a little counterintuitive depending on whether you're used to working with pure functions or not. The reason for this is that the impure function is run with this execution line at the time that the execution line passes through it. So in this case, we run it here. The output is now cached and will stay the same unless we run it again. So it doesn't matter that we've got a delay here. Both of these two are referring to the same value. On the flip side, for our pure function, the pure function is run every time that this output is referenced. So it is referenced here, then we wait 2 seconds, then we reference it again, and that's why we get a different value. This is really useful, but also very important to understand the difference. There are times where you want a pure function and there are times where you want an impure function. And if you don't understand when those times are, you will run into some issues that could result in you getting the wrong values. So for instance, in a case where we are just tracking the seconds that have passed, we need to use a pure function, or we need to run this every time. So we need to have it set up as a loop instead. But if you're working with a big complicated function and you're using a pure function just to store some maths in, which is the most common use for a pure function, then you probably don't want to run that maths every single time that you reference it. I've got a really simple example here. Well, I say simple. The pure function itself is fairly simple. All it's doing is taking the input distance and basically measuring the distance and location along a spline. We This is in my quest map pro. This is used to build the quest trail that between the player and their waypoint. None of that's really important. What you need to know is that, there's a little bit of maths in here, and we are calling it, I think, twice, once here and once here. So we, instead of running this function both times, we just store it as a local variable. You can see it's a local variable here, and then we just reference the local variable instead. That way we only ever running this function once. So we jump back into here. There's a couple of scenarios where this can get really bad and out of control. The scenario I just showed in Quest Map Pro is a pretty simple one. You're going to lose a tiny bit of performance, but it's probably not even going to be noticeable, especially with a function that simple. However, there's going to be scenarios where you are going to notice the difference. Again, one might be that you're needing the most up-to-date value possible. Another one might be you have a really, really complicated function in here, or you have a function that has a whole lot of casting, something like that. Another scenario might be something like this. Now, if I run the game and press G, it's actually going to completely freeze the engine right now. Why is that? That's because if we go in here, this is just getting all the actors of class actor. So it's going to get every single actor in the scene. Then we are going through, and for each actor, we are spawning a rifle pickup. That doesn't seem like it should freeze the engine. There's not a lot of actors in this scene. I mean, if you have a look, we've got really very few actors at all. There's only, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 actors in this scene. Shouldn't really freeze the engine. The reason it's going to freeze the engine is that every single time we reference the output of a pure function, we rerun the pure function, which means that every single time we run an element, we are rerunning this, and then every single time we're spawning a new actor, which means that we go through, let's say there was only one actor in the scene. That would still freeze the engine. We would go through, there would be one element in the array, it would run it, spawn an actor, then it would go to check if there's another element and rerun this. And because we've spawned another actor, there will now be 2 actors. So it'll run that, spawn another one, then there'll be 3. It'll just keep going infinitely. Not only that, but it gets even worse because with a macro such as for each loop, which is included in the engine, we can actually see in here there are multiple references to the array, which means that this array is actually going to run this twice for every element. And if you make your own macros and you're referencing the input a bunch of times and it's hooked up to a local function, you're going to run into that problem. If we instead, so this will 100% freeze the engine. And if you want to, you can go ahead and create this yourself. It's, very simple. There's the logic on screen for you if you want to do it. If you want to go ahead and recreate that yourself just to verify it does freeze the engine, go for it. If we turn this into a impure function and just hook that up, now it'll be fine. I can run this one. It's going to be a weird idea to do it, and I get a gun, because what's happened is for every single actor, it's spawned a gun. You can see a bunch of them up here. But it doesn't freeze the engine. So it's really, really important to learn when you should and shouldn't use pure and impure functions. Bottom line is, if you need to use a pure function, or you want to use a pure function, because they're actually really handy in making your logic much easier to read and that sort of thing, that's fine. Go ahead and use it. But rather than pulling off it, like in the case here, where we have it every single time, just store this as a variable. Actors, school actors array. If we do this, we are absolutely fine. We can hook that up to there. And once again, I'm okay to run this because it's fine. We've only run the actual pure function once. You can do this with variables or local variables, however you want, but it's just important to know that whenever you are using a pure function, if it's not a scenario like this where you have a delay or something where this value may have changed and it's important to have the most up-to-date value, either use a impure function or store this as a variable before you move on.